Everyone I know listens to podcasts. Anyone who's anyone has their own podcast. You could start your own show even if no one asks. It's easy to record yourself and act like an ass. Murder, sports and politics, histories or movies, heist or technology. There's an audience for everything. Yes, but who on earth will listen to three random Vatos reading books?
Seriously, it's just you guys hanging out.
No one's gonna watch this for at least a year, I'm sure.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Okay, just and action.
Hello, welcome to the show. Three random
Alright.
Vatos reading books.
Inaugural episode.
Here we go.
Art, you want to tell us about the book we're reading today?
Let's, should we talk about who we are maybe, or just go right into the book? We'll go right into the book.
Let's go around the book.
All right, so we chose to start a podcast book club. We're doing Isaac Asimov's The Foundation, or just Foundation. It's supposed to be one of the greats, right? I think we talked about that. We all gave our input. Let me say something about Isaac Asimov. So, what I understand of him is that he actually is a scientist by training. So his sci-fi is actually quite good in that, like, it's coming from an actual scientist, right? So he was a biochemistry professor at Boston University before he started writing fiction. He's a pretty cool dude, has crazy sideburns. I think we've all seen his pictures, right?
Can I see?
I don't have them pulled up right now, but that's not crazy sideburns there,
okay.
but...
Kind of looks like Robert.
All right.
Kind of, actually.
You know, not every person with glasses looks like me.
He one thing I didn't know, I think I found out when one of you guys were texting it, but he wrote the iRobot
That wasn't me.
novel that was turned into a movie.
I saw that. Will Smith, baby, who's
did you
better
know
than
that?
him?
He wrote his foreword.
Yeah, so that's basically it, right?
Yeah. So what'd you guys think?
Oh.
That's a good question, man.
It was an easy read, I thought. I thought it was a pretty easy read coming from someone who has a hard time just sitting and reading a book. I waited till the last minute. I panicked, so then I got the audiobook on Audible. So I listened to the first it was the first 10 pages, and then I was driving, and then so my brain was like trying to like focus on driving and listening. So I'm like, you know what, it's not safe for me. Need to just kind of. So I sat down and read the rest of it about 2 hours ago. Pretty easy read. It was fun. While it's not really time travel, it has a certain type of aspect of time and I just like the way they dealt with it as far as telling the future, predicting the future.
Yeah,
so that's where I'm
I mean, it seems like not so far, but it seems like the story is going to take place like throughout, maybe even like thousands of years of time. Like the very first paragraph, it talks about the 11,988th year of the galactic era, and then like that's when Harry Seldon was born, and then.
So we knew he's a genius, right?
Actually, I gotta be honest with you guys. That's the part I was like, there's so many numbers. What does this mean? So someone explains to me where in this time, like from this point, when does this take place? Like in the future?
Yeah,
well,
so
obviously in the future, but like.
It's gonna be in the future for sure. That little intro thing.
Let me read it. Let me read it. See, like if I'm not. Come on, dude. This says. Born in 11,988th year of the galactic era. Okay. The dates are more commonly given in terms of the current foundational era as minus 79 to the year 1 FE. Come on, don't tell me you know what that means, dude.
That's not super important. It's just these
right.
little things.
That was my mindset. Like, you know what? Well, it doesn't really matter. It's in the future.
So these things are literally just to give you like reference points. There, as you can see, it's supposed to be like a page out of the Encyclopedia Galactica.
Yeah.
Which we know what that is, or we found that out towards the end of the chapters that we read.
Yeah.
But it's basically just giving you like a reference point. We know that what this does is it establishes that Harry Seldon, one of the protagonists, it seems, is a genius, historically. We know that he didn't found, but he contributed a whole lot to the field of psychohistory, which we know is going to be super important.
Is that a real thing, by the way?
No.
I need that.
But it's interesting how
Stupid.
I mean, if you're talking about like 12,000 years in the future and you're making up a new field Like that would be like an interesting field to try to make up. So okay,
Dude, I was believing. I'm like, hey, what?
Doesn't it
I
just
bet
sound
you.
like statistics?
Yeah, it's like, hey, and I like the whole like it doesn't quite work that way. Like it's like, so what's gonna happen to me? It's like that's not how it works. You know, it's like
what it sounds like is like it's like a mix of like it's like behavioral economics. You know, it's like seeing like what the human population as a whole, how it responds to certain stimuli. In this case, they say like economics, and it's just like trying to predict human behavior, right?
Mm-hmm.
And like through statistics and math, and they just have it so down to a science that he's able to kind of predict the future confidently.
Mm-hmm. And it seems like he does too, because later on in the story we get hints that the Galactic Era did, crumble, or I don't know what they called it, the Union or
the Galactic Empire.
The Galactic
Imperium.
Empire, yeah.
yeah.
Like in the
Those are
very
all
next
cool words,
page.
by the way.
It's come out before or after Star Wars.
Who here
51,
reads,
yeah, way before Star Wars.
Yeah.
who reads science fiction here?
I've read a
reads?
few books, but I usually don't enjoy the science fiction books I read.
Were those books that you recommended recently? Was that sci-fi?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind. Yeah, I don't read fiction all that much generally, but science fiction less so. So this is kind of cool.
What kind of books do you usually read, would you say?
Non-fiction, just like non-fiction.
Great.
um,
More of a visual person myself. Yeah. Well, should someone kind of summarize? And I guess we'll kind of take our turns. But
so are we gonna
summarize?
are we gonna go by chapters? Because we can do like summary chapters.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Talk about what's in it.
You can do the first part, so that way, because that's the one that was read to me, and
In the first part, I think we pretty much get introduced to the gal who's a doctor in math and who's going to Trantor. What is it?
Trantor.
Yeah, Trantor. To meet Harry Seldon, who hired him, and then we learn too that he eventually writes an autobiography about him. You would assume like after he dies, and that's pretty much the whole first chapter. We
Well,
just
okay,
get his
so
journey over there.
we know that he's a scholar, right? So like he's on this like mission to go work with like the Einstein of that world,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like we know that Harry Seldon's like the man, and this guy gets summoned by him to go work for him. So he's on his way for him the whole first chapter. What did you guys think about hyperspace, like the jump to hyperspace? Like what I was thinking was, when was the first fictional?
I have a feeling
account
that
of-
George Lucas owes a lot of money to this guy.
Like who was the first person to introduce the idea of
To
like?
coin hyperspace.
I don't even know if they
Probably
use
this
hyperspace. Like,
guy.
what is the term for Star Trek? It's like is it
I don't know.
like entering
Warp speed.
Warp speed. There you
No,
go.
isn't that Star Wars?
But just like that idea though, essentially of like being able to travel faster than the speed of light.
yeah, I guess in this book it's called The Jump Through Hyperspace.
Yeah.
And then
And again, this was written in 1951, I think, right? So, like, this had to have been one of the first, I think. I mean, again, excuse me, I don't read science fiction all that much, but, like, I just thought that was cool. What else? It's also, we should also note that Gal comes from, he calls himself a country boy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just important too. He's on his way to Trantor. We know that Trantor is like the center of that whole civilization.
Yeah. I don't know if we get any hints at that at the first
Well, not
chapter.
quite yet, but we do know that
Yeah.
he's a country boy and that he feels that way.
He's going to work on the Seldon project, and then we also learn that there's been 12,000 years of imperial progress, and so he's, riding that way. And then I also liked how at the very end of the chapter, there's this line: "It was childish to feel disappointed, but childishness comes almost as naturally to a man as a child." And there is a lump in Gal's throat. It's just so sad, him being disappointed that he can't even look down at Trantor.
Yeah. That was. I mean, I'd want to too, though, right? Like if you were in that position, like I would want to see what it looks like.
Maybe some foreshadowing
Something.
for what's to come. Some disappointment. Because we don't really know if he's going to write about Harry Seldon in a positive light. Or I'm kind of the belief that maybe Harry Seldon isn't the good guy that we think he is so far in this beginning.
Dude, that's just how gullible I am. I'm like, dude.
Well, there's no reason to believe at this point that he's good, just that he's like a genius.
Really?
Just that he predicted the future, maybe.
Shit. I'm over here just believing everyone's
Like there's no one.
Why
said,
would he not? Yeah.
No one said that he's like a hero or anything. He's just like a world-renowned.
Yeah. I
Very
believe
nice.
it. I believe it, dude. I believe.
Okay, should we maybe just talk about SpaceX really quick? Because
Yeah,
he
sure.
was talking about this being the first time he was going to go through space travel, really. He had only been to the only satellite of whatever that world that he was in, Synex, right? This happens to be just coincidentally the day of the SpaceX launch, launching the 2 astronauts. What did you guys think? Did you guys watch this today?
I saw it on the Discovery Channel, and I'm so glad I almost forgot it, and I just was flipping the channels, saw it. My heart was beating, dude. I think it was the first. It was the first one since 2011, but I don't remember seeing the one in 2011.
I mean, obviously we grew up with the shuttle program, but I don't remember. I mean, except for maybe once or twice, but it wasn't. It was never a huge deal to want to sit down and watch a shuttle.
Launch. It was so sleek though, so futuristic with the suits too.
It was almost underwhelming because of how smooth everything went, right? It was just the rocket initially just exploded upward, and then we were just kind of looking at them not do anything because
the guy was checking his nails when he was
that's actually kind of cool too. Just
I could be an astronaut.
The design of, what was cool though, I was on a group chat with my family. I try to get them to watch with their little kids, and sure enough, one of my cousin's wives texted us a picture of their young son who's 2 maybe. And now he's probably older. He's just going into pre-K, I think. So whatever age that is. But he was I want to become an astronaut. And so already that's just one person who's been inspired by watching an actual launch, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
We could use some of that right now. Let's not get super topical, but it's pretty crazy right now.
Yeah.
Well said.
As we're
Humanity
sitting 6 feet apart, just well, might I add.
We are in the middle of a pandemic right now, a global pandemic. That should be a historical just reference that we kind of just anchor ourselves to right now.
Let's not forget to mention the injustice in the world right now. How about that?
Black Lives Matter.
They do, and they really do, and it's true. It is, and this is.
You're gonna get canceled the first episode.
No, it's true. No, if we're gonna go into this, I've been feeling really guilty because I've seen people post about things, and I've been feeling really not uncomfortable about posting something, but what can I add to the conversation? And I guess ultimately it's fuck yeah, dude. Just know that we, I don't know. That's the thing. Uncomfortable is not the word because it's not uncomfortable to stand up against racism, but what role can you play? I guess and that's where I'm struggling. What's my role?
It's hard to feel hopeful because usually we rely on our institutions to advance justice, right? And we don't, at the moment, feel like our institutions are serving us. So I feel a lot of people essentially feel the way you do, which is what do you do? I'm not part of an institution that can help with this sort of thing. There's a protest tomorrow, might be going.
Yeah.
We'll see how that goes, but back to the book.
In chapter 2, we learned
that the Spaceship Galactic Empire is under siege.
We can maybe connect this to the real world later because we'll introduce some of the predictions, right, from Seldon.
That's true.
And that might be an interesting...
Yeah, well, he mentions revolts happening against the current government. So it does all tie in the end.
A few chapters from now. Chapter 2. Someone
that's
summarize
huge,
that.
I'm telling you.
Well, I think
I found my groove later in the
Okay.
Dude, reading is really a muscle. It was gosh, this is I was struggling.
Point, this cut out. Just to let you know.
Oh really?
I don't know when it stopped. I'm so sorry.
We're still coughing.
I started choking and
we got the backup footage over here.
Okay. All right.
So
Okay.
We good.
And we're back.
In chapter 2.
Just gave a whole monologue and none of it was...
No, she got it. She got it.
I'm kidding. Okay.
Maybe we should have cut that more.
Chapter 2, we know... So chapter 2 is his arrival at Trantor, right? And he's going through essentially what appears to be the immigration, process of getting there. He's totally surprised by the immensity of everything. He they are in the debarkation building, which he says is a massive structure. He can't even see the sky. He can't even tell if like there is a sky, right? Like he can't see high enough to see the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
So
My favorite part of this chapter, well, I like the whole ending, the last page where it's just describing more from the Encyclopedia Galactica. But there's like a little bit of world building here when the driver, like the taxi driver, that like he's going through all these tunnels.
The hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like or what's her guy's name? Gal is just wondering like, how does he know which one to pick? All these holes, and maybe that was a metaphor for life.
Mm.
No, I don't think so, but you know what I mean. That was cool.
We know immediately that someone is following him, and he's aware of that.
Seems very like much like New York, right? Where like everyone
Yeah,
when you
like,
visit, you're like, oh my gosh, everyone's like, what? Come on, let's go.
Yeah, like what are
there's not
some
much-
movie scenes that kind of puts you in? This maybe isn't the best example, but like I thought of Harry Potter when they get to like the wizard world.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know.
On the alley, Diagon Alley.
Yeah, so like just like seeing
Where did that
everything,
come from?
and so that's essentially what he's dealing with, right? Country boy, middle of the empire, New York City of that place, and yeah. What
It's
else?
kind of like a transitionary chapter, I think. You really don't learn too much.
We do know just like for setting.
What? How old is he?
Trantor.
Do we think? How old do we think is this?
Well,
country
he's like
boy?
a doctor.
I think
32.
Does it
Let's
say
just
that he's
land on
just a
34.
PhD? Like he just graduated? Did it say anything about
Just
that?
a doctor.
I'm picturing him as like early 30s, maybe,
I'm thinking like
like late 20s, maybe.
26.
Sure.
You know, like
That. When are you usually out of grad school?
Well, because he talks
know?
about himself here at the peak of his scholarly career, or like this was like the end of like
thinking like Miles
Yeah,
Teller.
Who are you talking about? Seldon or Gal?
Gal. Like this is him just graduated, and now he's going like this is his like first job, after graduating or something.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I don't remember if they actually say that, but
No, they don't.
That's what I that's what I
Yeah,
pictured
that's what
too.
it seems like, yeah.
So we do know, just to give some more context to Trantor.
Yeah.
It is densely populated. It is essentially the whole world is Trantor, and it's essentially all one city, right? 40 billion inhabitants, and
And just for reference, that's bigger than the Earth.
and so this is like a super bureaucratic planet. Again, it's like the DC of the place. Everyone essentially works in the administration of the imperial government. And yeah,
They're like the hub of like everything, like just functioning, and they run the rest of the galaxy. Is really what it was said to me.
yeah.
I mean, I read.
I noticed this little reference that we get from the encyclopedia. They talk about at the beginning of the 13th millennium. So this is after Harry Seldon has already died, because we learned that he dies in 12,069 at the age of 81 years old.
I think that is the 13th millennium.
Wait a second.
It's like century, right? So like 20th century is.
But we don't know if they're keeping track like we're keeping track. Because you know how our
But I think
17th
it
century
works
is like the 1600s, but maybe their millennium is like their 1,000 years. Because what's all that FE stuff
Okay.
too?
Go ahead and finish your thought. I don't know.
Oh, you're right. Never mind. I think I'm
feel
the
like-
idiot.
All right,
This is
so
the idiot.
I'm glad we're all on the same page. We do not know what year it is. Let's just say, I like the way George Lucas phrased it a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
Yeah,
Just the
why are
opposite
they
of that.
giving us all
a
these
long
numbers?
time from now, and yeah.
What I think is cool is they do introduce also the idea that I think it was in I didn't write whether it was one of the reference notes, but yeah, it is. So we know that it's a vulnerable city now, right, or planet, right? Because
Cliff Notes.
what's been happening is that it's becoming a vulnerable planet because they keep being dependent on outer worlds for their food source.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
other
yeah.
necessities of life, it says.
China.
And that's been apparently clear to the most recent emperors. So what's happened in that process is that the trend in policy has led to essentially just trying to make sure that they can keep those doors open, right, for their survival.
Mm-hmm.
Which apparently makes it easy for, he writes that the policy has essentially become protection of its resources, otherwise known as Trantor's delicate jugular vein.
Oh yeah,
Right.
and then they mentioned that jugular vein again in the next chapter.
Yeah, so we know that, if someone is up to no good, they can severely wound their ability to provide for themselves.
Mm-hmm. And we also get some foreshadowing for the next chapter where they're talking about here how the population, like despite the billions of people that live there, and all of them are devoted almost entirely to the administrative necessities of the empire, that there's still too few of them, and it's like too complicated, and they're not keeping up with it.
Do we want to draw any parallels between Trantor and DC, perhaps?
Go ahead.
Or no?
Parallel that shit up.
I like Marvel better.
Go ahead.
DC Marvel.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. I didn't get that either.
Come on.
Okay,
God.
chapter 3. So, does someone else want to give chapter 3?
Robert, go ahead.
No, because listen, I see all your notes in there. I'm like, let me reread this part to know. Okay. He said, oh yeah, this is the same kind of thing where he's like,
Every
oh my
chapter-
god, like it's like, oh my god, it's my first time here, guys. I'm like, yeah, bro, it's really not anything great. Yeah, here you go. Here's a fucking ticket to. He wants to go see the fucking view, right? Isn't that what he wants to do? And he's like, bro, that's not for another 24 hours. Like, well, then can I see the view? And it's like, oh yeah, here, take this. right, wasn't that?
Yeah, so he wants to take a tour, and the guy's like, tickets are sold out.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I guess like a planetary tour was the first one, like to go all over. And then this one, he just goes outside,
Yeah.
like in
He's
some
like, is there
desert.
like an observation desk?
And listen, I know I wasn't reading this right. Again, it was. I can't read, but there was a whole elevator system, and he was floating, and it was like, "Whoa!" Some guy.
Yeah, honestly, the way that was written, I couldn't like.
What I was
head.
picturing is that like the elevator was lifting everyone up, but like it also lifts you up. But there's like something that holds you while it's lifting you up. That's what. And I probably
I picture like the ride at the stock show where you were in an alien spaceship, and
So you still have to hold on. You still have to hold on to something. And so he was like,
feet locked in.
this guy's fucking levitating above the elevator, and so I was like, "Yo, I got you, bro."
I read that twice, and then I was like, I don't care that much.
Thank you. Okay, dude. It turns out like you guys suck at reading too, right? Because no one understands it. But we get the sense, or not get the sense. It's literally saying that someone's like been following him throughout this whole time, right?
Yeah. So Gal noticed that someone was right behind him when he was like in the immigration line thing, and that apparently he still felt followed on his way to the room, right?
Yeah.
At some point, he mentions it again, like that he feels like he was followed, right? Turns out the guy was Gerald. Actually, we don't know that yet. Shit.
Sorry,
No, yeah,
we're
we
good
learned in
there.
this chapter.
But okay, so they get up there, right? And he finally does see the sun, and he starts talking to this guy named Gerald, who's like a friendly guy, who starts talking to him, and Gal. There's a conversation between them about that I found super interesting about why no one goes to the outside anymore, right? Or actually, remember the receptionist desk guy who he was asking for a ticket?
Yeah.
He even mentioned at one point, he was like, oh, it must be the dry season, as if like they really have no clue what's going on outside.
Yeah,
right?
well, as far as I read, I think they're all deep underground, like in a tunnel system, like
Right.
all made of steel. And so nobody, like, nature has become meaningless in this future world.
Yeah,
Like,
so-
they're just so uninteresting. And it sounds like it too. 'Cause
The way he said it, which I thought
Pause.
was really cool.
The card's full.
Oh,
The card's full, really?
Yeah.
I've got it going over here still.
Art, keep him
but-
busy on the
I
camera.
literally just put a new card in. I guess I don't know like how much a card holds. That's crazy.
Cuts to
It's only been like 20 minutes.
right, just like a video of you like doing like working out.
Okay, should we continue?
Yeah, we got the
continue,
podcast. We can get
Okay.
this up.
Okay, so I thought it was cool how you put it, which was that essentially the planet had a metal skin, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they were
You
just
couldn't view
underneath
it.
there.
Yeah.
So like he couldn't even make out like the horizon.
Was this
that-
outside of
that-
the tunnel too? Like,
Yeah, so they were outside. Like they.
and then there was still the metal in the sky. Is what?
No.
Or like everywhere. The planet maybe is like made
He
of
was like
metal.
looking down, and like essentially there's like a metal skin on everything, which is
Got it.
like all human structures, right? Man-made structures. And then of course they also say later on that they're actually underground a bit, it seems. So
That's
yeah,
right,
so
yeah.
like they literally don't. The people, the inhabitants of Trantor, don't really go outside at all.
What was
In
the
fact-
reasoning for that again? He was like, they do it like when they're a kid or
Well, it's
once,
just they've been so conditioned to not go outside. They
North Korea type of deal.
Yeah, there's like a few little things that they write here. There was no green to be seen, no green, no soul, no life other than man. So like not even any life. There's just humans here.
Yeah, so Gerald tells him, most people who are born in a cubicle, grow up in a corridor, work in a cell, and vacation in crowded sunrooms, and that some people apparently have nervous breakdowns when they're exposed to like the real outdoors, right, or nature.
Yeah, kind of like Asimov. Was that his name? Asimov predicting the future almost, where we just all become so dependent on electronics and technology.
Clothes.
Mm-hmm. And then they mention the emperor here, so we kind of get more insight into like how things are run. Like it's like an emperor.
Tell us about that.
That's all we get so far. And just like it talks about the emperor's palace set amid 100 square miles of natural soil, green trees, rainbowed with flowers. So he's the only one that gets to like see nature, I guess. And then he's on a small island amid an ocean of still, 10,000 miles away. So who even knows if he exists? It's almost like he's like a myth. And then later on in the next paragraph, we get another reference to the jugular vein. Delicately connecting the 40 billion of Trantor with the rest of the galaxy.
Who do we think... Hey, look, it's Gal. No, who do we think would play Gal in a movie? I'm still trying to pinpoint that...
I'm getting a vibe of like... what's Sherlock's like sidekick's name?
Are you getting the...
Winston?
I should know this.
You know what I mean? Doctor something?
No, he's not a doctor.
Yes, he is.
He is? Watson.
Sherlock Watson.
Yeah.
Dr. Watson, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that. Like, he seems like a pretty reserved guy. I guess just that.
So no actor.
Just
there's no one.
Well, I mean, Jude Law. He's played him, right?
Yeah.
But maybe not him. Jude Law's a little too... dreamy.
Who plays Sherlock in the TV series? What's his name?
The
Mysterio guy? Cumberbatch.
No, that's Sherlock.
Yeah, no shit.
I picture Batista.
That'd be like a cool take.
Let's just cast Vin Diesel in this. Let's just cast Vin
I'm
Diesel.
down for Vin Diesel.
He's a nerd, though.
And then
Vin Diesel has glasses in this movie.
We also get some like insight into the energy here. I'm not sure like exactly. They don't really describe it too much, but it seems like they don't need generators anymore. They got something cheaper. And then we also
get
it was
like an eco-friendly thing.
Yeah, and then we learn that Dr. Seldon is also goes by Raven Seldon.
I like that name.
Well, let's tell him why.
And then slang too. I don't even know how's that slang.
Yeah, he's like, you don't know about this guy. He's like, yeah, dude, I'm working for him. Like,
so Gerald's a little too friendly, and he's just like too inquisitive with Gal, right? And so like he eventually asks him about like what he's doing there, and that's when he tells him that he's working for Seldon.
Harry Seldon.
And you get the impression the whole time that he's been wanting to get to why he's there, right? Like
it's like pushing a little bit.
He's just like a random presence that is too friendly.
And then we also learn for the first time that he predicts disaster.
Yeah, so he tells Gal for the first time, like...
Harry Seldon's a psychohistorian. Let's just put that.
Harry Seldon is a psychohistorian who...
Call him Harry, he's actually...
Innovated it.
Who has been predicting disaster, and apparently Gal knows nothing about that. He says, I don't know, I've only read his math papers, right?
And so he just accepted a job, he's excited, he's like, yes!
He's like, yeah, bro, but the ones that they published, but have you read his real work? Like, I'm a real fan, bro.
Yeah, so that's basically what he's saying. He's like, Seldon's actually like a kook, is what he was trying to imply, right? He's like a weirdo who's been a Nostradamus figure.
Talking about doomsday and all this shit.
Yeah, and then we end the chapter with the man finally waiting for him in his room, and we're like, whoa, what's going on here, Gal?
That's pretty badass, right? Like,
and this
cool
guy's,
and
I'm Harry Seldon. Sorry, go ahead.
No. Go.
And then we learn he was old and almost bald.
Can I just say, okay, as I've been saying, I rewatched Lost a second time. Harry Seldon is played by none other than John Locke, a.k.a. Terry O'Quinn, dude. Look him up if you don't know who I'm talking about. That is Harry Seldon. He is described as what? Older, slightly bald, limping. I see him being played by...
What's his name?
Terry O'Quinn, I believe. John Locke. He has that kind of... I just see it, But that's the end of the chapter. We get more into his character in the next
okay, and then
chapter 4.
Or you want to break down chapter 4?
Yeah, let me just give a quick also definition because they finally defined what you know who I was picturing as Seldon? What's his name that played Dr. House?
Oh yeah, that's
Like,
a good one.
I think
because he limps in the show.
Yeah, so let me.
We need a good limper for this role.
Okay, so they do give a definition of psychohistory. It's one of the references from the Encyclopedia Galactica, and it's defined as the branch of mathematics which deals with the reactions of human conglomerates to fixes on social and economic stimuli. So yeah,
Hot.
it's just like predicting human behavior or like mass human behavior, right?
Yeah. And it's like painted as like a mathematical thing, but it almost seems like magic, and we kind of get to see how it works towards the end of this chapter when he says there's a probability of 1.7% that I will be executed.
Dude, this is
so
okay.
Like a robotic.
I gotta be honest with you. This is a chapter I'm like, okay, I'm in. Like, get me. I'm strapped in. I'm getting it. I love this type of shit. Go hard in the paint on this. Like, don't do that because I don't know if this is a chapter, but the story talks about like, no, this is not. That's not really how it works. Like, well, how do you know I won't do this? I'm like, well, that's not like this. It's not the structure. That's not how. Okay, but I think I'm going a little too ahead here.
But it's like also almost like in the hero's journey type of story, where the protagonist meets the mentor or like the old wizard guy, you know?
Yeah.
And he shows him like, this is what we're gonna be working on here. This is what I do.
Yeah, so
Pretty-
Gal knows nothing about what he's even being summoned for, right? He probably thinks he's just doing like a regular academic job at this point.
It's where Seldon's saying like, hey, listen, that person who you thought was just a friendly guy, he's like, he's part of the got sent by the Galactic Empire.
Yeah, he brings up for the first time the name the Commission of Public Safety, which is going to be a pretty prominent organization, I'm sure, throughout the book. We learn that they're not fans of Seldon, right? So Seldon basically tells Gal, like, the guy that you were talking to is actually a member of that.
Yeah.
And of course they asked about me, didn't they, right? And he's like, yeah, they did.
Mm-hmm. And then here we get him like finally predicting the end of the Empire as they know it. And he says, as Trantor becomes more specialized, it becomes more vulnerable, less able to defend itself. Further, it becomes more and more the administrative center of the Empire becomes a greater prize. As the imperial succession becomes more and more uncertain, and the feuds among the great families more rampant, social responsibility disappears.
So
That's what was bringing.
Let's go through the scene before that, which I thought was cool, which is like leading directly up to that. Seldon basically persuades or tries to convince Gal of like the soundness of his analysis, right, of psychohistory. Right, so last chapter ends with telling us how exactly psychohistory works or what it is, and this one actually shows the analysis, which is like he pops up a calculator. That's actually kind of funny, right? This takes place 12,000 years in the future, and they're still just using like calculators.
Well, they don't describe like the extents of the calculator.
Well, they
like,
said
what if it's a
they said there were
calculator?
buttons, you know, and like
Yeah.
like we're
Buttons
better
never
right
gonna go
now with
out.
like touchscreen, you know.
Dude, I prefer buttons to any touchscreen.
That may be fine, but that doesn't make it more advanced.
That's
So
what makes it advanced.
So they go through the thing, and like what I thought was cool. I'm sure you guys didn't get the math. I didn't get the math.
I got the math.
Got the math
But
for
they-
what? Like, like predicting the future?
He breaks down the math of like how like not the actual math, but like breaks down like what are the elements. You know, he brings out certain functions and like what the variables used to bring out like whatever equation he lands on, right? And so he's testing even his capability. Like this is like a new student coming to work for him, and he's giving him his analysis of what's going on, and throughout he's kind of quizzing him too to see like how good is your math? Like, can you keep up with what I'm working on? And so he feels like he's like almost being interviewed, right? He says so that he felt like he was he started sweating when he was being asked to calculate.
Just as I'm sweating right now.
So I thought that was
somehow
super cool.
stopped sweating and like.
No, I'm actually good. I heard the
How did
AC
that
go
happen?
on.
Oh, is that what happened? Is that why I stopped
Yeah.
sweating? It's probably gonna come out on the mics, but fuck it.
And then towards the end, so that's what Marcus you ended up with was him kind of giving the conclusion of the analysis, right? Which is like Trantor is like that's the trend we're on right now.
Pretty much we're doomed.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to fix it, I guess, or at least
And
prepare ourselves.
how cool is this cliffhanger in this this chapter? Like, I see this at the where he's like, he says, "But of course not. This is unprintable. Do you suppose the Imperium could expose its shakiness in this manner? That is a very simple demonstration in psychohistory, but some of our results have leaked out amongst the aristocracy. That's bad. I think I'm reading too much of this. Let's fast forward to the end. Oh, yes. Oh, wait, he says, all right, so are you in danger, sir? Oh, yes. There's a probability of 1.7% that I will be executed. But, of course, that will not stop the project. We have taken that into account as well. Well, never mind. You will meet me, I suppose, at the university tomorrow? I will, said Gal.
So I think
actually, never mind. That wasn't that great.
No, but
It's the next one.
It paints the picture of him like sacrificing himself for what he believes in. Like,
That's
you
pretty
know?
much it. The whole
Yeah.
I'm probably gonna die.
Yeah, and I don't care.
And as to the
I
reason
think
why,
I could have just summarized that part, but
so we know that the reason
sped read this, sorry.
the reason why his work has not been published, Seldon's work on psychohistory and his predictions have not been published on like whatever academic journals or whatever they use, is because the Imperium has a vested interest in them not, like the wider public not knowing these predictions, right? Cause panic, whatever you want to say. But so that's the dynamic that's at play right now. Seldon's looked at some kind of crazy guy. His work is not being published for political reasons.
Mhm.
And now Gal understands that that's the world that he's being asked to step into. So yeah. It gives the end gives some history on the Commission of Public Safety too. I didn't totally understand it in terms of like who really holds the political power. It almost seems like the Commission of Public Safety holds more power than the Emperor, right? That the Emperor is kind of just more of a figurehead, but these royal families or aristocratic families over the years have been essentially running things. Is that what you guys got from that?
Yeah, I mean, somewhat. I mean, it seems.
it's pretty much like how it is
Because
now.
they have like
People
an
in
emperor
power,
who that is supposed to be like.
like it just revolves around you're never gonna be like the little guy who's like, I'm gonna run for fucking emperor. No, it's like gonna be all these families, and they're just gonna continue just to hold the power.
But it's like a major, bureaucratic
Yeah.
state of families vying for power
Yeah.
and influence. And the commission is kind of like the highest organization or body, political body.
So
So yeah.
So chapter 5 just starts out like fucking all guns blazing. You think, I'll see you tomorrow. Sure, buddy. And then he's like wakes up and he's like, you're fucking held under arrest, you motherfucker. I'm like, whoa, bro, like, hey, I need an attorney, bro. I don't know what you're doing. He's like, you talked to fucking Raven, didn't you? And he's like, what can I where's my attorney, right? And then he's like, yeah, you got an attorney. And his attorney comes in and he's like, hey, real quick. He takes out the fucking thing. He's like, just so you know, they can record anything. It's not legal, but they still do it. So he takes out this device that fucking blocks
Oh, yeah,
the
I like that.
audio. And he's like, all right, Raven sent me because he knows that this was going to happen. It's like, he knew that this was going to happen. He's going to fucking sacrifice me. And it's like, yeah, but he's also sacrificing himself. Remember? It's like, okay, what is the end game here? And trying, that's
That's the end.
Yeah,
of
that
the
was a good
chapter.
summary.
that's pretty much it, right? And
So he's
Yeah.
held in his room.
Yeah.
And then he's interrogated by the commission. They come up to his room and he's interrogated. They ask him what he knows about the project. About
Also, what he
Seldon.
just talked with Seldon about.
Yeah, they clearly
Oh, yeah.
were recording his conversation. They ask him about, the predictions even.
And so I think like what we can gather from this part is like that the government or whoever is here, like they're evil because they're spying on people, or that Seldon is like so chaotic, or like that they're this concerned that they're like he's sticking out as someone that they need to keep their eye on.
Yeah.
And the prediction is, I don't know if we've actually flat out said it, but the prediction is 300 years from this point, the Galactic Empire will just implode and just
Yeah.
be, yeah.
And it won't be like a dramatic event either though. Like it
takes 300 years,
Yeah.
and but we'll get into that later about why, if he knows this, why not change it? But we'll get into that part later.
And part of me wonders if we're ever going to get to this type of stuff. It opens with talking about Cleon the First being assassinated, last of the Entunes. What is that? Like we don't
I feel
hear
like
about that at
that's
all.
just like
I got you,
political
honestly,
history
yeah.
that I mean.
I
I
tried
hope they don't get
to.
into it so quickly because
Yeah.
that'd be too much.
If I'm taking the AR test, if they asked me that, I've gotten that wrong.
And then
'cause-
this part too, usually under the control of the great families of the Chens and the Daibargs, it degenerated eventually into a blind instrument for the maintenance of the status quo.
I think that was the.
We're on 6, right?
No, 5.
Oh, that's still 5.
Yeah, and then it ends with the little intro paragraph. In a way, the beginning of the Commission's decline can be traced to the trial of Harry Seldon 2 years before the beginning of the Foundation era. And I mean, the book's called Foundation, and from what we've seen so far, like we're witnessing the trial of Harry Seldon, right? Like,
Yeah.
right.
Laura Zavakim is the lawyer that was sent by Seldon to represent Gal, and that's where he tells him, listen.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, you're good.
No, just, yeah, so we do learn that Seldon had actually anticipated all of that, right?
Yeah, it was all, like, he knew that he was going to be questioned and, or, you know.
It was very Social Network. I just picture Mark Zuckerberg, like, in court, making an ass out of everybody.
It's very much like Seldon is one step ahead of the curve on everything, right?
But he's using psychohistory to
Yeah.
his advantage, though, right? It's like the knowledge that you can predict outcomes based on human behavior and statistics together.
I like this part. It's the whole, like, we might find this out later, but where the lawyer, what's his name again? Avakim says, please, it was necessary. You were not picked for any personal reasons. You know, so it might be like you're just a nobody. You're just part of, like, you're just a pawn.
Wait, he says that to Gal, or who's he say?
He said, yeah, he says this to Gal. Please, it was necessary. You were not picked for any personal reasons. You must realize that Dr. Seldon's plans, which are laid out with the developed mathematics of over 18 years, include all eventualities with significant probabilities. Mm-hmm. This is one of them. So it's kind of like, you don't really matter. You're just a pawn in all of this. And it's like, well, maybe that is the case, but maybe. Mm-hmm. I mean, this book's, it starts with Gal, right? Like, it's got to be like, this guy's got to be casted as one of the hottest actors in the biz, and you know he's gonna be in the sequel, so he does matter. Is my theory in this? He does play.
Yeah, well, he's the
role.
one that eventually writes the autobiography that.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he was just trying to, like, comfort him at the moment, to be like, don't worry, this has nothing to do with you, really.
Oh, more like it's not personal.
Yeah, like you just happen to be the newest scientist to come work for us, and we happen to be at this stage of the plan. So, like, this was inevitable, but it could have been, like, the next guy that we hired.
Also,
but, like, not saying, like, you're a nobody, like, you don't matter. It's just...
And it's also painting a picture that Seldon's not, like, super, you know, that cold-hearted. He's, like, saying, like, dude, you'll be fine because of the fucking probabilities, like, 1% chance that you're going to get death. Like, 70, executed. Executed. So, everything seems to be okay so far. I mean, under the circumstances.
Should we get to chapter 6?
Yeah, let's do it.
Which is fucking awesome. But,
so chapter 6, we open up with what he describes as a trial, but it bore little resemblance logistically to the elaborate trial techniques Gal had read of. So, you know, it also says that outsiders don't even know that a trial of Seldon was being conducted. So this is all under
wraps.
Yeah. And then we get, like, a little cool Q&A section here.
This is my favorite chapter because it was straight to the point.
It was just like, it cuts to cross-examination, right? Like,
it was like an Aaron Sorkin fucking script.
That'd be like an Aaron Sorkin scene.
Anything stick out to you guys about this chapter?
Yes. And I wrote it down.
Oh, yeah? Taking notes.
I love the fucking... Okay. I forgot the question, but he says, when they're asking him about the probabilities, and he says scientific truth is beyond loyalty and disloyalty. It's like that's very much relevant, right? With
so what they're trying to do is they're trying to get out of Harry Seldon, like, what his motivations are. Like, they're trying to attach, like, malicious intent to whatever project he has going on, right? Like, again, they think he's like a psycho. They're keeping their eyes on him. They know they're cross-examining him, and they're trying to get him to admit that he has 100,000 people working with him, and we find out later on that it's actually 30,000 men, and then children and women.
Overall, it's 100,000.
And they're almost like scared that he's making an army or something.
This is actually my favorite chapter because while it's just straight to the point, it really explains how his probabilities work, right? And how they're like, well, so you're telling us 300 years from now, this galactic empire is going to fucking erupt and implode and everything's going to go to shit. And you have an army of 100,000 people. And if you know this, why don't you do anything to stop it? And
or like, are you planning on, like, you know, having your own army?
Exactly. And he's just like, bro, that's not how this goes. It's not like you think 300 years is a lot, but this has been building up for centuries, so it's like a fucking Titanic. We see the iceberg. You're telling me to turn it right too far. We're going to hit it regardless. So my agenda here is I can't prevent it from happening, but just know that once this happens, there's going to be, I forgot the amount of time, but like so many years, 12,000 years of just
30,000
pain, suffering, agony. So my goal here is just to go from like 10 billion years to 5 billion years. That's not really.
So we know what the end plan is.
He's
right?
trying to just minimize the
I think
pain
he
and
said
suffering.
from like 30,000 to 1,000.
Yeah,
right. So that's his goal right now.
Yeah, and he actually like outright states his mission statement.
Yeah.
He said, all my projects, my 30,000 men and their wives and children, are devoting themselves to the preparation of an Encyclopedia Galactica, which is what we read about, in the chapters. They will not complete it in their lifetimes. I will not even live to see it fairly begun, but by the time Trantor falls, it will be complete, and copies will exist in every major library in the galaxy.
And this encyclopedia pretty much is with the implosion and the destruction of the Galactic Empire. The fear is that all the knowledge and that's been created and everything, all the resources will just kind of die with it. So they're building this encyclopedia as some kind of tool for the post-apocalyptic empire to, again, just...
It's like leaving behind a Wikipedia so that people don't have to start
from
at
scratch.
zero.
Yeah.
So,
Noah's Ark for like technology, or just like an instruction manual for like, this is how we can get back here quickest.
I actually always think about that, like how long it would take me, for example,
to build a computer or like a wire.
Let's say fucking Armageddon happened and I was responsible for like leading humanity without a Wikipedia, Like I couldn't just like
art recipe
set the foundation of science and just like.
I feel like I would forget how to make scrambled eggs.
This is how. Well, I'm going to read this. This is how he presents the encyclopedia. He says, they ask, how do you propose you do this? He says, by saving the knowledge of the race. The sum of the human knowing is beyond any one man, any 1,000 men. With the destruction of our social fabric, science will be broken into a million pieces. Individuals will know much of exceedingly tiny facets of what there is to know. And it goes on to say just pretty much that. Just getting all these people, bringing it into one encyclopedia, one tool, one resource.
I'm sure it's a common occurrence for readers of of sci-fi. I'm not in that category just yet, so it's interesting to me to just compare what the predictions of technology were, or even the goals. So in this case, like 12,000 years in the future, and we're only going to get started trying to build a Wikipedia. Like, we're only 50 years away from when this was written, and we have essentially like knowledge democratized completely.
But it's almost like this is gonna last past the destruction of what we know. Like it paints the picture that the society's gotten really lazy. They just kind of trust everything to be kind of done for them.
Well, that's kind of us now.
It's us now, yeah.
But it's still material though, because like he says, it's going to exist in the libraries of.
It's like a book.
Whereas like now, like if you have an internet connection, it doesn't matter where you are, you have access to.
But like if the internet were to just shut down, I mean, I don't know how it works, but I could just see it shutting down, and then what would we have? Like we'd have to go back to the libraries. But if we don't have like this is how to build everything back.
You know what?
Up
It's
again.
like the historical example is like the Library of Alexandria. It's supposed to be the greatest library at the time, and Alexander the Great, obviously. Great. Alexander the Great, was crazy ruler and had access to all different societies, and basically got the knowledge from everywhere into one place and burned to the ground.
It's kind of like the story of humanity, like the rise and falls of the different societies and civilizations.
I forgot who was making the point recently, but so like obviously there's a lot going on with the world, right? Maybe we can talk about this now. And there's like no reason to believe that America or the West or whatever civilization you want to talk about, there's no reason to believe that it's going to last forever, right? Like the Roman Empire fell. The first examples of democracy, truly Greece, right? Or Athens, like any one of these places, if only like historical circumstances had been a little different, played out a little different, like we would have had hundreds and hundreds of years of a democracy. And so we would have developed science way, prior to when we actually did. We would have had different forms of enlightenments happen that resulted in more, freedoms for people, liberties, and that sort of thing. Political philosophy would have sprung up earlier. And it's just interesting to think about, like, if we go, let's say America ends in the next decade, right? Let's not make this too political, but let's say Trump is elected again and, like, we continue going to shit. Like, I mean, where does humanity go after that, right? Like, if the United States falls, like, other countries will have to continue the project of self-government.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting to think about. It's,
it really is, yeah. And I think that's kind of where the story is leading us. And in Chapter 7, we kind of get more of the same, where it's...
I should say how awesome Chapter 6 was, though. Like, that's my favorite chapter.
It was cool. It was a cool chapter.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Chapter 7. What happens in Chapter 7? Seldon's being interviewed without his lawyer present.
So it's the next day. It's supposed to be the next day at the hearing, but we learn it's not an actual hearing, right?
It's very under the,
So they essentially just meet in a room. It's just Harry, Seldon, Gal, and then members of the commission in, like, a dark room.
See, it's very much as like
And
interrogation,
tensions are high.
Dark Knight, Joker, Commissioner Gordon type, or Batman type of what.
Who would play Chen, who we know is the chief commissioner, and they describe... How do they describe him?
I would describe him as Forrest Whitaker.
What? No.
I don't know any
No,
actor.
they literally say that. Like,
Asian?
he says, like, I don't even know if he has the ability to smile because his face is so thin. Remember?
Oh, wait.
So he's like
That's
the
Chen? I thought that
ultimate
was-
like bureaucrat. He's being silent throughout the whole time. He says it's as if he doesn't want to dignify us with the sound of his voice.
Yeah, he's kind of like the big boss man in the table.
And so he finally starts talking in this chapter when they're in that setting, and it actually sounds like he's kind of like giving his ear to Harry Seldon, right? Saying he's trying to get to, like, okay, does this guy actually believe what he's saying? Because if that's the case, that's not good for us, right? Like, he starts asking him, like, why are you so concerned with this if this is apparently going to happen 3 centuries from now? Like, don't you understand that your predictions will cause more, tension
And he almost gives him like an ultimatum that he's really not allowed to say no to, because
It
it's
is an
like
ultimatum.
death or
Exile.
exile. And then
Is that in Chapter 7? Or in
yeah,
Chapter
it's
7?
Chapter
Aaron?
7.
it ends with Seldon saying, "I accept exile," and then Gal is like,
Yeah,
"Whoa."
because it's in everyone's best interest for him to write the book.
So let's say what the exile is exactly, right?
Go
Like,
ahead.
it's not just exile, but it's like
the edge of the galaxy.
he says, you know what?
It's like
I'm
He's
gonna
like
give
in
you,
the
I'm gonna
dunce
give you an
corner.
option.
he's like in Ohio, pretty much.
Either we're going to execute you, or we're going to allow you to continue your project with all your 100,000 people, and we'll move you, and we'll leave you alone, and you can continue your project. But you're going to do that at the edge of the galaxy, far away from us. You're not going to cause disorder where we're at.
And
But
you would
wasn't there
assume, like,
something-
resources aren't there too? Like, like
Wait, what?
whatever he would need. I don't know. Like, I figure he would need some type of resources that the city has, the biggest city in the world or the universe. And then he's going to this outer planet where there's nothing there. Like, like he has to.
And
set
Chen
things up.
even kind of tries to persuade him that way, saying, like, you'll have all the time to focus on your work, away from all of us. Of course, he's just trying to get him to go out there. But at the end, we do see that he accepts, and it's a pretty easy acceptance too, right?
Mm-hmm. And they kind of, like, almost like Chen is like dismissive of him, or like he almost wants him to believe that he thinks like everything he's saying is fake or like imaginary, but he's still intimidated enough to send him away,
Yeah, I actually couldn't make out too, just the way it was written, when he was like, I can also convince, Chen is telling him, like, I'll convince the people that you're gonna be working on your thing, and like I'll even act like I believe it.
Mm-hmm.
But like I honestly couldn't tell what he was trying to say.
I think he was trying to say, like,
It's like,
hey,
does he actually believe it, or is he saying that?
Are you talking about
he's gonna
the
sell it?
Chen? I think he
Yeah.
was saying, listen, even if I do believe it, and I might believe it, I might lie to our people and say that you're you're gonna save
okay.
this. I think that's how I read it. It's like
So-
that you're doing good. Like
So
this,
publicly, he's gonna lend support to.
like if you're saying worst case scenario is no matter what, or no matter best case scenario is no matter what, this thing's gonna fucking fall. I'm telling him best case scenario is you're gonna try to prevent it from happening. Is what I was reading.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think it's almost like he knows maybe that he's not doing the best job and that society's not all as cracked up to be, because he knows what it looks like behind the curtains. And so this guy's predicting the destruction of everything that he's kind of in charge of. And so in a way, it's like a machismo type of thing where he's like, get the fuck out of here. Like, you know, like...
That was interesting too. I don't know if it was in chapter 7 or 8 where... it must have been chapter 8 actually, so we can
just go to chapter 8.
So they get back, right? Harry Seldon and Gal go back to the university after, they accept the offer. And they're met by soldiers there. And they inform Seldon that they're actually implementing martial law. And that they're going to be given 6 months to prepare for the move to the planet, which we now know is called Terminus.
Mm-hmm.
So they head to his office, where it's apparently secure for reasons that I couldn't totally understand, but it seems like there's like another device that keeps them from being able to listen into their conversations, right?
Yeah.
And so he reveals more of the plans.
And also, like, he kind of predicted that he was going to be exiled too.
So
like,
yeah,
he was planning for it already.
So we know this whole time that he's actually still pulling the strings a bit. Like, he had actually anticipated this, so much so that he was planning for exile for 2.5 years, right? And so this is still kind of breaking or blowing Gal's mind at how like ahead of this he is, which is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like I was saying, like, he has like these magical powers that nobody else has, because he has all these mathematicians or psychohistorians, people that are working for him, but nobody is able to do what he's able to do or predict how he's able to predict.
He also could be full of shit too. He could be like burning up. He's like, I planned this. And he's like,
the billionaires.
Because that's all that's happening. And it's like, oh, you're forced into exile. I was like, I know. That was the plan all along. It's like, really, dude? Like,
cool
they're sending you all the way to a place that's barely happened.
Yeah.
Okay. So he is kind of following blindly, right? Which is right. Now I'm looking back and I'm like, maybe should we be trusting this guy?
Yeah.
What was interesting too, what I was going to say earlier that I thought was in 7 was, it's maybe not so important, but when Seldon's telling Gal about Chen's reasoning, he's like, trust me, he understands. Like, he's a commissioner. They almost innately understand psychohistory because it's dealing with like large masses of human populations, and so he's like, that's like, they understand that more dramatically than like a normal person. Like, they're in politics, right? Like so he has to believe me, like, deep down.
A big part of me wonders like how much Seldon has predicted up to this point that we don't know about yet, like how much he's gotten right and like why they want to exile him, because if this is his first prediction, I don't even know why anybody would be paying attention, really, So I feel like he's had to have gotten some things right leading up to where we're at in the story.
It's interesting to think about, because I mean, this is also kind of commentary on like how knowledge is made. Like, what I mean, like science, the way science works right now is they publish academic papers, and that's kind of a political process on its own, right? Like, peer review papers, they have to turn them in. Then if they don't get published, like,
and they need funding,
that's just
too.
Literally, I mean, not stuff that they get to work on necessarily. Like, I was telling you guys recently about that one scientist who came up, like, he apparently thinks that he found like a new foundational way to think about physics, right? Like fundamental physics. And he's been out of the academic game for so long that people right now are just like, he doesn't get to tell everyone his theory because he didn't go through the proper channels of like peer review. And like,
Daniel
that's an interesting
Faraday.
thing. Yeah. That's an interesting thing to think about.
Who's that?
There's gonna be a lot of lost. Okay, there's gonna be a lot of lost references for these podcasts. Again, I just rewatched it. Daniel Faraday, dude. You could just watch it, but there's some type of time travel. I'm trying to look over. It's a time travel. Okay, there's a season where they do time travel, and I fucking love it. Okay.
Can we get into some predictions here?
Yes.
Well, I know I was noticing the names of the parts. The first part was the Psychohistorians, and we kind of got their perspective so far. Part 2 is the Encyclopedists. Part 3, the mayors, and then next the traders, the merchant princes. But it makes me wonder if it's almost like The Wire or Game of Thrones, where we're going to see like these different perspectives, and then maybe even like in different 1000 era years. Like.
Time out. If this came out in 1951, why does he put to the memory of my mother 1895 to 1973. Is this guy dealing with probabilities?
Oh my god.
Shit.
What?
Maybe not. Maybe this came out in renewed in 1979. Okay, sorry, that was.
Oh, so maybe this is like a late.
This is a republished, yeah, kind of deal.
One last thing though, just to finish off that chapter, because like they revealed a little more that we should maybe mention, is like what his plan is, right? So like Seldon knows that he's gonna die soon. He reveals that he has no more than 2 years to live, and so he's advancing this project in the hopes that people were gonna carry the load after him, right? He's gonna be gone, and he's hoping that this project continues because it's gonna take a long time for this apparently to kind of happen, right?
And he's doing it with such energy and urgency, like because he knows he's dying.
And so the plan is to establish a scientific refuge on Terminus and then one on the other edge of the galaxy, right? We don't know why that's important necessarily, but like that's the plan.
Yeah.
2 sides. Yep. And he keeps assuring Gal that like everything's gonna be fine, and he's gonna understand more and more, right? He tries to.
I think Gal might find himself a little conflicted at some point, thinking that Seldon might be full of shit to a certain extent, or maybe that his motives are not all that he says, is what he's portraying him to be. So that's where I'm at. That's very vague.
Wow.
That's also interesting too, man. Just to think of like that archetype of like just mad genius, mad charismatic genius. Like it's hard not to.
Maybe he's
kind of
building.
believe these guys.
Maybe he's building the encyclopedia for another galactic empire. Once this implodes, it's like, well, these families have been in power for so long, and they blew up, and they're going to try to rebuild faster. Well, guess what? I am going to build this new galactic empire with resources and knowledge from this, and just with this new era of the galaxy galactic empire. Boom.
Maybe.
That's
So
where I'm at.
for next time, we're going to read pages 47 or 41 through 83, or part 2, pretty much. The Encyclopedias.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Part 2.
Part 2. All right, for next week's episode. And for the first time, we didn't do it the first. But I'm Marcus.
I'm Robert.
Oh, we should have introduced ourselves, right?
That's
I'm
fine.
Arturo.
Well,
We can
we'll do
edit
it next
that.
time.
Yeah.
No, we'll do it next time.
I'm not doing it now.
We just did.
I'm Arturo.
All right. And remember, you better found.
If we had followers, we would ask you to read along with us.
Yeah. You can find it on your nearest bookstore, library, Amazon.
So Marcus, now that we're concluding this episode, how do you think you will edit this episode? Like now having kind of seen what this might look like.
Is this still recording?
Well,
Or
I
should I-
stopped it just now.
Okay, well, there we go.
All right.
There we go.
See you next time.